They thought he was an easy target, an old taxi driver, alone at night, perfect for a quick robbery. But when they looked into his eyes, something was different, cold, calculating, professional. And in that moment, they realized they'd made the worst mistake of their lives. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. It was midnight on Chicago's South Side. A misty fog hung under the streetlights, and the city's noise had faded to a distant hum. 62-year-old Dave Morrison sat behind the wheel of his yellow Crown Victoria taxi, waiting for the next dispatch call. Dave had been driving cab for 6 years. After retirement, he'd tell everyone he didn't want to sit around the house. Truth was, a quiet life wasn't for him. He needed movement, needed to know the city, needed to talk to people. Nobody asked what he'd really done for work, and he never volunteered the information. In the back seat of his taxi sat a gym bag. Inside was a clean shirt, water bottle, and an old cell phone he never used but always carried. Dave's habits were simple. Wake up at the same time every morning, drink his coffee black, and never be late. That night he dropped off his last fare from Murphy's Bar to a house on the South Side. Now he was heading back downtown when a new call came over the radio. Unit 47, pick up at Riverside and 3rd, late night airport run. Dave grabbed the mic. Unit 47, copy. Riverside and 3rd, on my way. When he reached Riverside Street, 3 young men stood in front of the corner building. They looked normal enough, jeans, sneakers, hooded sweatshirts. But as Dave approached, something caught his attention. Their stance, hand movements. They seemed too alert, too organized. He pulled his taxi up and rolled down the window slightly. Airport? The middle guy, looked to be in his late 20s, stepped forward. Yeah, man, going to O'Hare. Dave unlocked the doors. His instincts were telling him something, but he had no concrete reason to refuse the fare. As all 3 climbed into the back seat, Dave watched them in his rearview mirror. Which terminal? He asked, shifting into drive. Terminal 3, said the same guy. But his voice didn't sound natural. Dave hit the gas and pulled onto the main road. The first few minutes were quiet, just the low police scanner chatter from the radio. Dave's eyes kept drifting to the mirror. The guys in back were making eye contact with each other, sharing meaningful looks. When they reached the more isolated parts of the city, the guy in back reached into his pocket. Hey, old man, he said in a harsh voice. Pull this cab over and give us your cash box. Dave didn't hit the brakes. He didn't slow down either. He just glanced in the rearview mirror and adjusted his driver's seat slightly. What did you say? He said in a calm voice. This time the guy on the left spoke, holding something in his pocket so Dave could see it. There was a metallic glint. You heard what we said. Pull the car over and give us your money. We don't want to make this hard. Dave looked in the mirror once more. This time his eyes were different. They weren't taxi driver eyes anymore. They were cold, assessing, dangerous eyes. Boys, he said in a low but clear voice, I'm going to give you one chance. Get out of this car right now and walk away. This offer is good for exactly once. All 3 laughed. The middle guy slapped Dave's shoulder. Are you out of your mind, old man? We're asking for your money, or else... Dave's hand suddenly left the steering wheel. What happened next was so fast that the 3 guys in back couldn't process what they were seeing. Dave swung his right hand back while simultaneously hitting the brake pedal. When the taxi suddenly stopped, the guys in back lurched forward. But Dave's hand had caught the middle guy's wrist, pinning him to the seat. With his left hand, he'd grabbed something from near the gear shift. Nobody's going to move, Dave said, in a voice they didn't recognize. Keep your hands where I can see them. Keep breathing. The guys were stunned. The thing in Dave's hand was a knife, but not just any knife. Military, professional looking, and the way he held it, like he'd used it thousands of times. Man, what the hell are you doing? Shouted the guy on the left. Dave's eyes met his in the mirror. Right now, you're in a very bad situation, but you still have a chance to walk away. Get out of the car. Walk away. Last warning. Are you crazy? We're gonna... Dave's hand moved and the knife at the middle guy's arm suddenly disappeared. At the same time, the gun in the guy's hand dropped to the floor. What I'm holding is a lot more effective than your gun, Dave said, the calm in his voice terrifying. And I know how to use it very well. You have 1 minute. Decide. The 3 in back looked at each other. What the hell was this old taxi driver? The guy on the right, the boldest of the group, tried to lean forward. Listen, old man. Dave's other hand suddenly reached back and grabbed the guy by his collar. The movement was so fast that nobody in the taxi could even see it, but the guy's face suddenly went pale. Stop talking, Dave said. Get out, now! This time, there was no negotiation in his voice. It was an order. All three started getting out of the car, not smoothly, but they were getting out. But the middle guy tried one last time. "This isn't over, old man. We'll find you." Dave got out of the car. He was 62 years old, but the energy radiating from his body was far more dangerous than theirs. His graying hair cut short, his straight posture, and most importantly, the coldness in his eyes. "Listen," he said, with no trace of fear in his voice. "I've been dealing with people like you since I was 24, but at least they were professionals. You're just unlucky amateurs." The three guys looked at each other. They couldn't quite understand what this man was saying, but they understood he was dangerous. "Now here's what I want from you," Dave continued. "You're going to walk away. You're going to pretend tonight never happened, and you're going to remember that you never want to see me again." "Or what?" asked the guy on the left. Still finding some courage, Dave looked at him, and that look instantly destroyed all the guy's courage. "Or you'll find out," Dave said simply. All three started backing away from Dave, silently, step by step. After they got a few meters away, they started running. Dave returned to his taxi, put his knife back in its place, and started the engine as if nothing had happened. The radio crackled. "Unit 47, status?" Dave picked up the mic. "Unit 47, all clear, heading back to downtown." But Dave didn't go downtown. Instead, he went to a nearby 24-hour diner. When he walked in, he was the only customer. The night shift waitress, a middle-aged woman, brought him coffee. "Rough night?" the woman asked. Dave smiled. "You could say that. Taxi driving isn't easy work, especially at this hour." "I'm used to it," Dave said. "I used to do harder jobs." The woman looked curious. "What kind of work?" Dave took a sip of his coffee. "Government work." "Like FBI?" "More military," Dave said, seeming to want to change the subject. "This coffee's really good." The woman smiled and returned to her other duties. What Dave didn't know was that there was a man sitting at a corner table in the diner. He was pretending to read a newspaper, but he was watching Dave. This man, Rick Santos, was a retired police detective. He now worked for a private security company and was investigating another case late this night. But something about Dave's behavior had caught his attention. Dave's posture, the way he scanned his surroundings, the position of his hands. Rick recognized these things from his 30 years of police experience. As Dave was getting ready to leave, Rick also got up and approached him. "Excuse me," Rick said. "Rick Santos, retired Chicago PD. Could I talk to you?" Dave looked at him, an assessing look. "Sure. Is there a problem?" No, just how long have you been driving taxi?" 6 years. "What did you do before that?" Dave paused for a second. "Why are you asking?" Rick smiled. "Professional curiosity. Your posture, the way you scan the environment, it's familiar." "Military," Dave said simply. "Which unit?" Dave reached into his pocket for money. "Old habits. Good night." But Rick didn't let it go. "When did you retire?" 7 years ago. "What rank?" Dave looked directly at him. "Why these questions?" "Because," Rick said, "I've seen a lot of military in 30 years, and you're not just military. Special forces, right?" Dave's face didn't change. "Good night, Detective Santos." But Rick wouldn't give up. "Wait," Rick said, following Dave. "Did something happen tonight?" Dave stopped, but didn't turn around. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. My instinct. Did someone find out who you really are and get surprised?" Dave slowly turned around. "Detective Santos, you have the right to speculate, but I don't have any obligation to tell you anything." "You're right," Rick said. "But if bad things are happening in this city, I want to know." Dave thought for a second. "Bad things happen all the time. Tonight wasn't different, but you are different." Dave left money on the waitress's table and headed for the door. But before going outside, he turned to Rick. "Detective, if you really have 30 years of police experience, you know some questions shouldn't be asked." Rick nodded. "I understand, but if there's a security issue in this city..." "There's no security issue in this city," Dave said. "At least not tonight." Rick watched Dave get in his taxi and drive away. Then he pulled out his cell phone and called an old colleague. "Charlie, it's Rick. Sorry it's so late." "Yeah, I know what time it is. Listen, do you still have access to active files? Can you run a plate check? Crown Victoria taxi? Plate?" "Yeah, I'll wait." A few minutes later, the phone rang. "Yeah, Charlie. David Morrison, 62 years old. Clean record." "What do you mean, file is classified?" "Very strange." "Okay, thanks." Rick hung up the phone. In 30 years of police work, he'd never seen a taxi driver with a classified file. Meanwhile, Dave was driving home, His small apartment in Lincoln Park was a one-bedroom, simply furnished place. There were no pictures on the walls, just the city view from the window. But in the bedroom closet, in the back where nobody would find it, there was a place. Inside were old photos, documents, and some items he never used but never threw away. Dave pulled a box from the closet. Inside was his military ID, old photos, and a letter. On the envelope it said, David Morrison, SEAL Team 6, 1985 to 2018. Dave didn't read the letter. He just held it in his hand, then put the box back in its place. The next morning, Dave woke up early as always, made his coffee, and prepared the taxi. But this morning, there was something different. The police calls on the radio were more frequent than usual. All units, be on the lookout for 3 subjects, armed robbery attempt downtown. Dave turned up the radio. Suspects fled the scene after failed robbery attempt. Last seen on foot near Riverside and 3rd Street. Dave smiled. So the 3 guys from last night had tried their luck elsewhere, and this time they'd been unsuccessful. In the afternoon, Dave was waiting on Airport Road. He was in line to pick up passengers from O'Hare. This was normal routine. A businessman got in the taxi. Downtown Wells Street. Dave headed out. The passenger was talking on the phone in the back seat. Yeah, the conference was great. No, I didn't have any problems. Chicago's a safe city, at least if you take taxis. Dave looked in the rear view mirror. First time in Chicago? No, but I usually drive my own car. This time taxi was more practical. Good choice, Dave said. City traffic can be tough. How long have you been driving? 6 years? What did you do before that? Dave had answered this question so many times that he now responded automatically. Government work. Interesting. FBI, more security. The passenger nodded and returned to his phone call. For Dave, this was an ordinary conversation. Most passengers were curious but didn't ask deeply. When they reached Wells Street, the passenger paid and left a tip. Thanks. Safe travels, Dave smiled. You too. But as the passenger walked away, Dave saw a familiar figure on the corner. Detective Rick Santos was watching them. Dave parked his taxi and approached Rick. Are you following me, Detective? Rick smiled slightly. Number, I'm just investigating another case in this area. Coincidence. Really? Really? But David Morrison, your file is interesting. Dave's expression didn't change. Is it? Classified. In 30 years of police work, I'd never seen a taxi driver with a classified file. Maybe you're seeing one for the first time. Rick nodded. Maybe. Or maybe you're not an ordinary taxi driver. Dave looked directly at him. Detective Santos, if you think I've committed a crime, arrest me. If you don't, have a good day. I don't think you've committed a crime, Rick said. But I think you're protecting this city. Dave stopped. This was a comment he hadn't expected. What do you mean? What I mean is, last night 3 young men tried to rob a taxi. This morning the same 3 guys were caught trying another robbery. And most likely, after the conversation between you, they'll never rob a taxi again. Dave said nothing. David Morrison, Rick said. Whoever you are, this city is grateful to you. Dave walked toward his taxi, but before turning away, Detective Santos, some people retire but never really leave their job. They just do it more quietly. And so, on the streets of Chicago, there was an ordinary taxi driver. But he wasn't ordinary. He was someone who had served 33 years in one of America's most elite units, had served in the most dangerous places in the world, and was now continuing to serve in a different way. David Morrison, retired SEAL Team 6 operator, continued to protect Chicago's streets every night. Nobody knew. Nobody recognized this silent guardian on the streets. But sometimes, real heroes are found in the most ordinary places.